You know, the council rules are suspended. You're not telling me, give me time. Mr. Bryan.
You're not running the meeting.
You're right, I'm not. But the rules have been suspended. According to our administrative code, which is very clear, I know because I wrote the legislation myself and had it passed, that items cannot go on the agenda unless they have a sponsor, a named sponsor, shall be named.
That's correct.
That is legal.
Said a mistake was made.
Okay, so why was it not corrected? Why was it not? First of all, it should never go on any agenda, period. It should never go on the draft agenda or a final copy agenda. The mistake should never be allowed.
That's your opinion.
So now we're going to dispute what the rules are? So you pick and choose the rules that you want to follow? That doesn't make any sense.
Where does it say the draft agenda has to have a sponsor?
Where does it say that administrators can write legislation? It doesn't. You're right.
It happens all the time.
That doesn't make it okay. That does not make it okay because it happens all the time. That's the problem. Thank you. That's what I want to articulate. That's what I want to articulate was the fact
an
that just because
appropriation amendment, last meeting, you went, you were all upset that Mr. Housley participated in writing legislation. An appropriation amendment, no one else up here, he's the finance director. He's going to prepare exhibits for appropriation amendments.
And then he needs to get a sponsor.
Qualified to do that, and that's how things get put together.
And then between meetings, there's a window of time. Do we have a deadline? Are there not rules or not administrative rules that state very clearly?
3 minutes up.
Is he not understanding that
We
council
suspended
rules?
council
Does he
rules.
not understand that council rules are suspended?
Look, I want to say something, please. Can I have the floor?
I'd like to finish my.
Are you done, sir, so I can
No,
talk?
I'm not. You keep interrupting me.
I'm not interrupting you.
You
I
are.
want to say so. You asked a question.
I asked him. I didn't ask you anything.
Number one, we are all part-time employees.
What does this have to do with my question,
Wait. Will you give me a minute?
Sure,
I'll
please.
listen to you, Rattle.
Sure you do.
Please.
Go ahead.
Sometimes I don't know exactly to the very last minute, and something's not prepared to the last minute to sponsor. I've always sponsored legislation when it needed to be sponsored.
Except this time.
Now, wait a minute. I wasn't here. The legislation, I would be glad to have sponsored it. It was omitted.
But you did.
This isn't the end of the world. Why are we?
Follow
This
the
has
rules.
happened 1,000 times before. Let me say something. Wait, you want me to listen to you? Listen to me. How much legislation was sponsored by me and Mrs. Flutzer and Mrs.
John, this
Mr.
is
Wait, I
your
never.
questions. Sorry.
There,
with all due
there was
respect,
other
sir,
people
these
that had a
questions
chance
are
to sponsor.
absolutely irrelevant
There
to
was
the purpose
other
of my
people that
discussion
could have
right now.
sponsored this legislation.
You're
Why
going
didn't
to try to hijack this conversation like you do
Why
most
didn't?
of them.
Why didn't somebody call me?
I'd like to finish
All
my
right,
point, and then
it's-
I'll sit down. I'll sit
Very
down.
minuscule. You're making a big deal out of a mountain out of molehill. He apologized. I sponsored it. Now they brought it up. We need to get it done. Can we move forward, sir? It's Christmas.
Let me know when you're done. Are you done?
Yeah, okay, go ahead.
Thank you. No, my point was that the rules exist for a reason to be followed by everyone, administrators, legislators, everybody. Whether you were here or not, the excuse that you make that you didn't know or you weren't here, that's irrelevant and moot. If you didn't sponsor the legislation prior to the administrative deadline that's set in our charter, then you don't put the legislation on the agenda, period. It's not up for debate. I don't know why this is a debate. Just because things have been done wrong or improperly for a long time doesn't make it okay to continue to do it wrong. That's not an argument.
It's your opinion it was wrong.
It's in black and white.
Legislation was requested by the deadline.
And it wasn't sponsored by the deadline, was it? Was it sponsored? Mr.
does it
Akam,
say
was
it
the
has-
legislation, was a legislative sponsor secured by the deadline of that submission?
Show me where in the ordinance it says this.
I'm asking Mr. Akam a question, sir. Could you?
Want me to answer?
Was a legislative sponsor secured by the charter deadline for legislation to be submitted by legislators?
There's no charter deadline for legislation.
There's not a cutoff. There's not a cutoff time.
Not in
There's
the charter.
absolutely a cutoff time.
Not in the charter,
Really?
really.
So anybody can submit a piece of law. That's funny because when I was on council, the law director repeatedly, there was actually a date and a time. A Wednesday, I think it was Wednesday at 3 p.m. It
Mr.
says it in
Cross.
black
In
and
the
white.
codified ordinance is not the
Mr. Crop,
charter.
excuse me.
So we just pick and choose what rules we follow. Okay, I understand.
there's sometimes
Council,
I-
I'm going to stop.
I don't
I'm gonna
sponsor
stop.
unless I
can
read
see
it.
that I'm getting nowhere with this. I apologize if I got a little heated.
I'm sorry.
But this really irritates me. It's very frustrating that the answer and the excuse that we constantly get from administrators that are highly paid should be professionals and actually care about doing the right thing and all the time, not just when it suits them, but they should do it all the time. We're paying them unbelievable amounts of money coming out of our pockets. I just think it would be the right thing to do things by the book all the time, not when it suits you. So I appreciate the time. Thank you so much for suspending the rules so I can have a chance to at least discuss this at length. I do appreciate it, and I will sit down and listen. Have a good evening. Thank you.
Motion to reinstate the rules of council and return to the meeting?
Second.
Roll call?
Mr. Bariak?
Yes.
Mr. Rufner?
Yes.
Ms. Stempert?
Yes.
Ms. Benias?
Yes.
Good evening, Lyle Waddell, Myrtle Beach.
What's your address, sir? I couldn't
You're
hear.
going to come visit?
I couldn't hear your address, sir.
It's in Myrtle Beach there, John. You coming to visit?
Okay, I hear it now.
Thank you.
Thank you. Please speak up a little bit too, will you, Lyle?
Oh, I'd like to. In the agenda tonight is voting on the minutes from the November 6th meeting, and I'd like to bring a couple things to your attention. I have asked for public records from that closed budget from November. I haven't got those. I'm still waiting for the public records request that I have from the October closed budget. I've sent 4 emails out to members of council and everybody else asking for this information. Evidently, we're not going to get it, so the first of the year, I guess we have to start filing lawsuits again because nobody wants to do their job. Second of all, one thing that stands out in the budget there that I looked at was we have a part-time contractor that works for the city at $20 an hour that is being paid 40 hours a week, full-time, pretty much all year long, and is the assistant to the city manager. There's 2 checks written for $1,600 each during November, and if you look back through the other months. But the charter is very clear that the city clerk is the assistant to the city manager. Very clear on that. If you don't have that legislation or you don't have that document, I would be happy to provide it to you. We're paying a contractor to do what the city clerk is supposed to do. The previous city clerk, Mrs. King, did everything, including the public records request. So we're spending $800 a week on a part-time employee to do the things that the charter says that the city clerk should be doing. Oh, and by the way, just so you know, when you guys talk about the grants for the launch and that, I think it's a great idea, but nobody seems to keep reminding everybody those are reimbursable grants. You have to spend that $1.2 million before you can, get it back. You have to spend it, and you have to submit it for approval. They have to approve it and give it back to you. There's no guarantee that it's all going to be approved. If you can spend $1.2 million to fancy up a half-acre property down along the road there, I like the idea of the launches. So you can fund the police department. I'm real interested where you're going to get the $1.2 million to put up front for this thing. So, thank you.
Hi, is this still open?
Yes, it is, ma'am.
Okay. Anna Eby, 50 West 9th Street. We were trying to watch it from home and there was no sound. So I don't know what's been going on here, but I just wanted to make a statement. I walked in on Brian Kropp doing his thing, but why do we have money for roads when the levy didn't pass? And I went to the police meetings or to try and get the police back, and never was it mentioned you were going to split it between roads and the police department. That whole percentage could have gone on the police if you've got the money for the roads. Does that make sense to anybody else but me? I don't know why you bother to have meetings to do something and then just totally blow it out of the water. That whole amount could have gone for the police and people would have voted on the police.
Anyone else, please, would like to come to say something, please? If not, I'm going to roll. Oh, here comes somebody.
Rick Curlin, 1009 Wood Glen, Newton Falls. I thought it was very nice of council to let people speak on things that are not on the agenda already, but that's irrelevant. I am calling into question, it's my belief that the things on the ordinance on the agenda right now that were put on the agenda after the election are illegal. It says in the charter change, it should, that a council person shall have the right to put anything of interest in the charter, if done in a timely manner and legal, as long as there is a co-sponsor. And if you'll look, these motions and ordinances that are new have no co-sponsor. They are not legal tonight. This is just what the charter change says. You should know the charter change. Council up there should know it. These are not legal. The other thing I have in question is the other motion that's on for a forensic audit. I don't believe anybody up there understands what a forensic audit is. That'll cost us $20,000 to $50,000. We haven't outlined in this motion what you want to do, any parameters on how to do it. You haven't included the finance director. And still, in the charter that was not changed, you have no right, as a council and legislative body, to ask a department head or command an department head to do anything. That is an executive decision, just like our government is executive, legislative, and judicial. You have no right as a body. You're breaking the charter in two places now. Ms. Steppert, you should have known that. You cannot direct the law director to do anything. You can direct the city manager to have the law director do something, but it's not your responsibility and it's not your privilege to do that. That is the city manager's responsibility. So that this motion is definitely not legal. And the other motions, in my opinion, do not have, unless you have a secret co-sponsor up there that you put on before it was on the agenda. You did it. Mr. Baryak did it. I didn't agree with that either. There was no sponsor on it. There should have been two. You cannot ask for a change and put a sponsor on there because it's on the agenda already. It shouldn't be on the agenda. That's what the charter says. The charter says what I'm telling you. There was a charter change that anyone could do this as long as they got a co-sponsor. You don't have it. You can't direct the department head to do anything. You've earned the right.
Mr. Baryak,
Time, sir.
Thank you.
Anybody else would like to address the chair tonight, please? If not, I'm going to rule us closed. I want everybody to bear with me tonight. I'm not in the best of shape. I apologize. Approval of previous minutes. I needed motion to adopt the minutes separately
Mr.
on regular
Baryak,
meeting.
the reports are before the minutes.
Wait a minute. What's that, sir?
The reports,
Oh, I'm sorry. I turned the page already. Reports, acting mayor. I attended last night I attended a meeting to try to get the community center open again. Seems everybody wants the community center open again. We're gonna work hard on it. That's all I've got to say for now. Council members, start with Mrs. Stempert, please. Would you like to say something?
My only report, there's a fire board meeting this evening. Obviously, I'm not there, so I have no reports.
I'm just beginning. I have no reports.
Mr. Rufner?
I have no report at this time, sir.
All right, thank you. I'd like to go to the finance director, sir. You have a report today?
I just want to remind everyone that,
Mr. Housley, would you
yes.
please speak up?
Sorry. Again, I'm going to state it again. November's closed. November's reconciled. I also want to make a correction to the record regarding a remark I made at the last council meeting and the health benefits. I made the remark that these insurance policies were rate guarantees. However, they weren't term guaranteed, and that you would be eligible to go back to the table and renegotiate in January. There are some types of policies like that, but in this case, in this circumstance, with this policy, they are rate guaranteed, but they are not term guaranteed. So you are restricted to that term. Does not mean that you can't go back and try to renegotiate, but if you do, if you are able to renegotiate at a different price, you may be, I'm not saying you will be, but you may be subject to a fee for terminating these contracts early. And then I also want to mention that I met with Mr. Rufner on Saturday for as much time as he needed to go over the budget materials. And I met with Mr. Rufner and Mrs. Stimpert today for a very small amount of time also to discuss the budget materials and to go over the benefits. And with that, I have nothing else to report.
Thank you. We'll go to the law director. Sir, do you have anything tonight, mister?
Just to respond to Mr. Kerlin's points, I respectfully disagree with him. I don't believe that's what Article 3, Section 10 of the Charter, the amendment that was recently passed, states, and it certainly wasn't the intent of the Charter Commission. That the additional language talked about it was meant to address the situation where the city manager, is the person being in charge of the agenda in the past, has elected not to put items on the agenda that were submitted, and that it was intended to address that situation, that if the item was submitted on a timely basis, that it would have to be put on the agenda if there was the person requesting it identified that there was a second co-sponsor that would support that legislation, and at least the idea is to be a second of a motion, to at least it would move forward for consideration. So that was the intent, and I'm sure the charter review members would agree with that. It doesn't prohibit items that were submitted properly, that were put on the agenda. It doesn't invalidate them because there's not two co-sponsors. And then the other issue of, being able to direct me, council has the authority to handle things that were within their duties, and motions to, like this one, to take action, put out a request for proposals. As the law director, I would be the appropriate person to assist with that issue. I'm appointed by council, and I disagree that matter has to go through the city manager if it's something that's approved on the council floor by motion. So that's all I have, Mr. Bardia.
I have a question. They're sponsored by two people. I'd like the public to know, wasn't that just one of the very recent charter changes?
Yes.
Thank you.
And again, that's not what I believe that the charter amendment states, and that's not the intent of the charter amendment, that everything that goes on the agenda has to have two co-sponsors. That applies if the city manager, being in charge of the agenda, refuses to put it on, that it would still go on if two council people want to overrule the city manager and insist that it be on the agenda.
Would anybody like to address the law director before I close this? All right, I'm going to rule reports closed. We're gonna go on to approval of previous minutes. I'm gonna need a motion to adopt the minutes together or separately. Do I have a motion to adopt them either? I'd like to make a motion to adopt them separately.
I'll second that.
Motion's on the floor to adopt them separately. Any discussion? Roll call.
Ms. Benitez?
Yes.
Mr. Bariak?
This is November 15th.
This
Right.
is to consider them separately.
Yeah, separately, yes.
Mr. Rufner?
Yes.
Ms. Stempert?
Yes.
Now we'll
Alright.
take each one. So
Huh?
now we'll take each one separately.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I thought we just had that motion, sir.
Well, I thought you made a motion to vote on them each one separately. So we
Yes.
made that vote, so we're gonna vote on them separately now. So the first motion would be for the regular meeting minutes of November 15th, 2023.
Yeah. Motion, motion to accept the regular meeting minutes, November 15th.
I'll second that.
Roll call.
Mr. Rufner?
Yes.
Ms. Stempert?
Yes.
Ms. Benitez?
Yes.
Mr. Bariak?
Yes. Special meeting minutes, December 6, 2023.
Make the motion.
I'll second.
Roll call.
Mr. Bariak?
Abstain.
Mr. Rufner?
Yes.
Ms. Stempert?
Yes.
Ms. Benitez?
Yes.
Okay, passes. Regular meeting minutes, December 6, 2023. Do I have a motion? Or second the motion? I'll put that motion on the floor.
I'll second.
Second?
I thought we did that. We did this.
Who's seconding it?
I second.
Ms. Stempert? Seconded. Mr. Bariak made the motion. Ms. Stempert seconded. Ready for the roll?
Or,
Ms.
okay,
Benitez?
Yes.
Mr. Bariak?
abstain.
Mr. Rufner?
Yes.
Ms. Stempert?
Yes.
All right, motion passes. We go to, public hearings.
There's none this evening.
I don't see any for tonight. We'll go to unfinished business ordinance 2023-45. An ordinance amending the electric rates. I have a motion to put that on the floor.
So moved.
I'll second.
I'm sorry, will you read that by title, Mr. Alcombe?
Sure. Ordinance 2023-45, version 2, an ordinance amending the electric rates.
Thank you. We already had a motion to put it on the floor. I just forgot to read the, is there any discussion on this?
I do.
Go ahead.
All right. For those of you that have been calling and asking the questions, I sat down one night, spent a good bit of Mr. George's time going over this. If you take and throw out all the discombobulated 600 kilowatt estimated this, that, the other, and look at the straight up numbers, you will see that the increase on the electric itself, the actual electric cost, is 1 cent per kilowatt hour. That is your increase. The debt service did come off. However, there is a $4.75 service charge being added in there. It does go up 50 cents more than what we did have on our debt service, but the purpose of that is to go into the electric fund to start building a reserve to actually step forward and make these corrections and updates as they come up, rather than having to go back and try and locate and find and figure out where we're gonna get the money from for all these upgrades that are coming. We sat here and we seen the presentation a couple months back, maybe a month or two, it's all blur. But, you know, we're looking at millions of dollars worth of updates that are coming for the electric department. We have 4 substations. We got the 69 kilovolt, or KV volt, transmission lines, those are all coming up. That's what this service charge is going towards. And that was actually specified in several emails that went back and forth between the engineer, Mr. George, and myself. It's to help offset that cost in the future of what we're gonna have to come up with later. So that's, your actual increase for electric, though, is straight up 1 cent per kilowatt hour. Get rid of all the 600 kilowatt estimated usage hubbub. It's 1 cent per kilowatt hour. Service charge is going up, but that's for future upgrade and expansions. So I hope that clarifies a little better.
May I have the floor, Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Just to add to that, these upgrades, with talking to Mr. George, they're needed. If we are to have a big storm or other substation go down, the one that we have that needs upgraded isn't going to keep us alive. It's not gonna keep the electric on for the city, is my understanding, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Rufner, because you understand this stuff better. The other thing is, in talking to Mr. George, this is something this upgrade is going to start happening hopefully sometime next year. It's not something that we're gonna be waiting for things to fail and it's 3, 4, 5 years down the road. These are things that need to be done and should be taking place relatively soon. That's it.
Anybody else? I'd like to weigh in on that. I also talked to Mr. George. I don't want to be the Grinch. But there was $460-some thousand taken out of the electric. Thank God we didn't have to pay it back, but it still brought down our reserve. Also, the public ought to remember, we have over $4 million we're paying on the electric smart meters that was passed, which we really don't have yet. This has to also be factored in. And for us just to go up 1 penny, when Church Street, we've been putting Church Street substation off for years, kicking the can down the road. And I agree with Mrs. Stempert and Mr. Rufner that to keep our substations, one is newer than the other one. One's, I don't know, 7 years, one's 12, whatever. Everything has a life expectancy. And we're trying to get ahead of the, so we have a little bit of money and not be worried that we don't have the money. That's the way I understand it too. So, is there any more discussion? That's unfinished business. All right, then I'm gonna go on to, do we have to vote on, we don't have to vote.
No.
Oh, we have to vote on the unfinished, I thought it was on, oh yes, we didn't vote yet. I'm gonna put a motion on the floor to vote on this.
We don't need a motion, Mr. Barry, we just need to call the roll.
I don't have to put it on?
It's on. It's already.
Motion
Could just
second was already
vote
made.
on it,
Yes.
right?
Yep, just, Mr.
I'll
McComb needs
call
to
for
call
the
the
roll
roll.
then, please, sir.
Ms. Stempert,
Yes.
Ms. Benitez,
Yes.
Mr. Bariak,
Yes.
and Mr. Rufner.
Yes.
On, the next ordinance is ordinance 2023-46. Will the clerk please read that by title?
Ordinance 2023-46, an ordinance authorizing the city manager to enter into contracts specified herein for the purchase of chemicals needed by the Village of Newton Falls Water Plant for the calendar year 2024.
So moved.
Mr. Rufner,
I'll second.
Ms. Stempert,
Seconded by Mrs. Stempert. Any discussion? I'm gonna call roll then.
Mr.
Please,
Bariak.
Mr.,
I'm sorry,
would you call the roll, sir?
thank you. Mr. Bariak,
Yes.
Mr. Rufner,
Yes.
Ms. Stempert,
Yes.
Ms. Benitez.
Yes.
Okay, we're gonna go on to, ordinance 2023-47. Will the clerk read the ordinance by title?
Ordinance 2023-47, an emergency ordinance authorizing certain amendments to the appropriations for the fiscal year ending December 31, 2023, and authorizing the finance director to amend and file a certificate of resources with the county auditor.
I'll make that motion.
Mr. Buriak,
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Rufner,
Discussion?
I'll just go, well, I do.
You have the floor, sir.
Just go ahead and say that This is closing out the FY '23 budget, taking everything down to the end of the year. The numbers that you see on the appropriations handout,
Which one are we on, sir? Aren't we on
47.
47? All right, go ahead, sir. Go ahead, sir, I'm
If
sorry.
you look at the appropriations on the Exhibit A for 2023, this is closing out the year and basically taking us to the point where we're going to cover everything that's out there. One of the things to think about too is just to better explain what the appropriations are. Think of it as a bucket. It's not that there's actually cash in there. Okay, the appropriation is a fund level that we can go up to, authorized to go up to. And if you want to take a look, I had a good example here. Park and Recreations, for example. It's Fund Site 204. If you look at it, Park and Recreation Community Center, okay, current appropriations are $50,000. That was the $20,000 that was appropriated or actually transferred initially, the $30,000 appropriation that wasn't needed. With the, we're looking at $64,731 in that bucket, so to say. The reason I'm calling it a bucket is that $64,000 is our $44,000 insurance return from the roof plus our $20,000 original transfer. You can't have $64,000 in an account that's only set up for $50,000. So that's why the additional $14,000 in appropriations is being added. So we have to have a bucket that matches the size of the revenue that's in that fund. Is that an adequate way to explain it?
Yes, sir.
And there was another example I had on there, people were asking me about it too. My apologies for the delay. I don't remember exactly which one it was. But the easiest way to look at it is when you're dealing with the appropriations, the appropriation measure is setting the appropriate size bucket for what we have. The communities, not the community center, the services committee was another one. Originally, it was forecasted $12,000, the senior kitchen. Well, the senior kitchen collected $14,000 in donations. You can't have $14,000 going into a bucket that only holds $12,000. So we had to increase that. At the same token, that's rolling over into next year for the $1,700 starting out for 2024. Again, adequate?
Yes.
Okay.
Would anybody else like the floor? Mr. Housley, is there anything you'd like to weigh in on this before we go through with it?
No, sir.
Okay? Then I'll call for the roll.
Mr. Rufner?
Yes.
Ms. Stimpert?
Yes.
Ms. Benitez?
Yes.
Mr. Bariak?
Yes. Do we need to read the title again, sir? This is emergency?
You don't need to read the title again, but we need to pass it for a second time.
All right. Ordinance 2023-47. We're going to,
Need a motion?
So moved?
Mr. Rufner made a motion.
what was that, sir?
Mr. Rufner made the motion to pass it for the second time, so we need a second.
I'll
Okay,
second.
seconded. So that was
Version 2.
roll call.
It's an emergency, so we have to roll it.
Any discussion first? Roll call.
Ms. Benitez?
Yes.
Mr. Bariak?
Yes.
Mr. Rufner?
Yes.
Ms. Stimpert?
Yes.
Motion passes. We're gonna go on then to, ordinance 2023-48. Will the clerk read that by title?
Ordinance 2023-48, version 2, an emergency ordinance establishing the annual operating budget and setting forth the appropriations for 2024.
I'll also make that motion.
I'll second it. Discussion?
Yes, here.
Go ahead, sir.
Like Mr. Housley said, I spent 6 hours in here Saturday going over this with him. Again, tonight, we went over a couple other things. I do have some amendments I would like to make on this, but I will let everybody go ahead and make their first address before I make the amendments to some of the numbers. But this is not the end game. This is to get us rolling into '24. This is our starting point. This isn't the end-all, be-all, and it's not the last time it's going to be looked at. I highly encourage every member of council to take an opportunity and sit down with Mr. Housley and go over the details in the funds, in the accounts, and in the different balances to better understand exactly what is being included where. A lot of people don't understand, and they, well, I won't say don't understand, but they don't realize when you see on your appropriations that there's always the legal level, other operations. You know, what is that? Well, that is your supplies and incidentals, so to say, to run that department. So for example, if we were looking at planning and zoning or not planning and zoning, the zoning administration, people want to ask, well, what is that $44,000 in there? It's broken out in the budget, and Mr. Housley can show you exactly line by line what is the incidentals, what is the cost for printing, what is the cost for XYZ, the postage, everything. Line by line, item by item to come up with that number. It's not just, it's, you know, $100,000 for 2 part-time employees. It's actually salary plus all the supplies and incidentals to operate that department. So, anybody else?
Anybody else, would you like to?
All right, before we do that, I would like to make a motion to make 3 amendments to the document that you see in front of you. First amendment would be for zoning department. Legal level personal services, currently sitting at $80,513. I'm going to recommend reducing that down to $64,983.
64,983.
Correct. Which will reduce the overall total for the zoning department from 125.4K down to $109,901. So that's the first amendment I like to make. The second modification or amendment will fall under the building and lands maintenance. It's still under the general fund. It's gonna be on page 2 at the very top. Legal level of operations currently on at $574,000.02. $60.02. I made a big fat line over my thing. Want to reduce that down to $479,060.02.
Would you say that again, sir?
Which part? The number or which one I'm looking at?
What you were at, the second one?
Second one I'm looking at is building and lands maintenance.
Okay.
Falls under the general fund and
Right.
code 100. It's on page 2 of 6 at the very top. So legal level, other fund, other operations, reducing it down to $479,060.02
474.
or 74.
Oh, I'm sorry, 479, okay.
479, correct?
Yes, you're
All
correct.
right. 479 for a total of, total reducing it down to $513,515.69. Which brings the total for the general fund, which is the next line down below that, for the total fund site 100, being 2.453531.34. So $2.453 million for the general fund.
And then did you want to update the grand total on the last page?
All right, so that takes us to the very last page. So the grand total, very last line is $20,323,004.21. That's initially just from the questions and answer time I had with Mr. Housley. We've reduced it by $110,570. And I highly encourage other members of council to take a close look as well.
Are you gonna make 3 separate motions or just one motion?
Yeah,
for all?
one motion.
One motion, all-inclusive on that.
All right. I have a question. Mr. Housley, when you put this together, how did you ascertain the numbers are the numbers that you put out there necessary in your opinion?
Yes, sir.
And I'd like to ask Mr. Rufner a question. Why, sir, do you want to reduce it right now? What is the reason? We can always come back, you can always come back to that later on.
Yes, yes, and
But why do you want to, what is your reasoning, sir?
May I
through
inter-
through
may I intervene?
discussions with
Go
Mr.
ahead, sir.
Housley.
I agree with his recommended amendment.
Okay, all right. I just wonder why we put a little extra on there, you know?
Okay, I'd originally budgeted for 2 part-time people in the zoning department at 30 hours instead of 20, which was a good catch by Mr. Rufner. And then I'd additionally set some dollars aside under what I call a kayak grant of $95,000. I knew we had a paddle grant out there, potential paddle grant, but it's too early to put that money in there, so that could easily be taken out at this point. So we took it out.
We are cutting the hours down then on zoning, right, sir?
Well, we're budgeting them at what they should have initially been budgeted at.
Okay.
They were over budgeted originally.
Okay. Is there any more discussion? Anybody else like the floor? All right, we're gonna take the vote on the amendments first.
We need a second for the amendment?
Correct.
I will second the amendments.
Okay, Mr. Rufner made the motion, right?
Correct.
Seconded by Mr. Sempert. Roll call.
Mr. Rufner,
Yes.
Ms. Stempert,
Yes.
Ms. Benitez,
Yes.
Mr. Bariak.
Yes.
Now we need a motion to adopt it as amended.
So moved. Oh,
Second. Roll call.
Mr. Bariak,
Yes.
Mr. Rufner,
yes.
Ms. Stempert,
Yes.
and Ms. Benitez.
Yes.
Now we need to pass it again because it's emergency legislation.
Yeah, sorry. Put it on, I'll make that motion, to put it back on for,
Second reading.
I'll second.
roll call.
Mr. Rufner,
Yes.
Ms. Stempert,
Yes.
Ms. Benitez,
Yes.
and Mr. Bariak.
Yes. Okay, passes. We're gonna go on to ordinance 2023-49. Would you, will the clerk please read that ordinance by title?
Ordinance 2023-49, an ordinance authorizing the city manager to enter into an agreement, purchase a 2023 Ford F-350 truck from Sarshone Ford Lincoln for use by the wastewater department.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Discussion, please. Anybody like the floor? I'd like to say is that there are some trucks that are very, very old. And to keep them in in the vehicles and some semblance of, so they can have dependable transportation. What is that one truck, 1990?
Their original one,
Yeah,
I don't have the exact hours. Does
I'm-
someone have the, exact year?
My understanding is, I think they use a van to go around, do the readings and a lot of work, and this would replace a very old van that they're using.
okay. Any discussion on it anymore? Call for the roll, please, sir.
Mr. Rufner,
Yes.
Ms. Stimpert,
Yes.
Ms. Benitez,
Yes.
Mr. Bariak.
Yes. Motion passes. We're gonna go on to, ordinance 2023-50. Will the clerk please read the ordinance by title?
Ordinance 2023-50, an emergency ordinance amending Chapter 191 of the Village's Administrative Code, the Village Tax Code, to conform to the requirements set forth in Ohio House Bill 33.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second that one. I understand that one.
Discussion.
May I have the
You
floor?
you have a first and second, right?
Yes.
Go ahead, ma'am.
I would just like to state, this is just bringing our tax code up to speed, up to legal with the House Bill 33. Correct?
Correct, yes. It's
Cleaning
it's
up the language.
required, we have to do it, we have to comply with the changes required to municipal tax codes. It's not raising anybody's rates, it mostly deals with
Remote.
people who work for businesses, work at a different location, and them being allowed to file the tax withholdings to be at the location where they are actually working, whether it's at home or a remote location, rather than when the business is located, and it prohibits taxing people under 18. for municipal.
Is there any, would you like the floor, Mr. Rufner?
No, thank you.
All right, anyone else? Mrs. Benitez, would you like the floor?
No, not for that one.
All right, then I'm gonna call for, would you please call?
May I make just
Yes.
one more?
Yes, sir, go ahead.
It also places a reduction on the, or a limit on the late filing fees or penalties too. So something to be aware of. So if you do submit a late tax return, check with Rita, and you might notice that the late filing penalty should be a little bit lower.
Okay, thank you. I'm gonna call for the roll then.
Ms. Stimpert,
Yes.
Ms. Benitez,
Yes,
Mr. Bariak,
Yes,
Mr. Rufner.
Yes.
okay, we're gonna call for another, ordinance, this is an emergency ordinance. Well, we don't need to read the title again, do we?
No, we just need to, another motion, another second, and another vote.
I'd like to we need a motion to put that on the floor again then. It's an emergency.
I'll make the motion to put it on the floor.
Ms. Stimpert,
second.
Ms. Benitez.
Roll, please. Discussion, any discussion? Roll, please.
Ms. Benitez,
Yes,
Mr. Bariak,
Yes,
Mr. Rufner,
Yes.
Ms. Stimpert.
Yes.
okay, motion passes. We're gonna go on to 2023-51. Will the clerk read the ordinance by title?
Ordinance 2023-51, an ordinance authorizing the city manager to accept the bid of Hilscher Clark Electric for tree trimming services.
So moved.
Second, discussion.
how many, did you get more than one bid, or how many bids did you get, or whatever?
I'm not sure, I know it went out for bid, and it was publicly advertised, and I'm not sure how many responses were received, but this was the recommended bid.
Mr. George went out for the bids.
Right, right.
Mr. George went out for the bids.
Thank you.
May I have an address?
Anyone else would like to, go ahead, Mr. Stemper.
Since the city manager isn't here, I will, I guess, point my question to you, Mr. Bryan. If we are required to go out for bids, why are the bids not in our packet for our review? This legislation was on the agenda with no sponsors, and we have one bid.
Yeah, like I said, I don't know how many bids there were. I certainly would recommend that that information be provided to council in all cases where we go out for bid and be advised of what bids were received from what companies. And so I can't answer that question.
Okay.
I'd
Thank
like
you.
to have the floor. If there was only one bid, there's only one bid. But Mr. George, I don't know the exact number of bids, but he handled it. He's handled it in the past. Everything's been, you know, as the council would like to have that in their packet. I don't see why Mr. George wouldn't mind, and the city manager wouldn't mind putting that in the packet from now on.
It'd just be nice to see what's going on. I mean.
Yeah, I understand. I know a little bit about tree trimming and, you know,
Yes,
how
I understand that.
footage wise and, yeah.
I understand that, but like I said, I just, in the future, I mean, I'm new at this game, okay? But some of those things I would just like to see comparisons.
Anybody else? I'll make a motion to, it's on the floor. Roll call?
Ms. Benitez?
Yes,
Mr. Bariak?
Yes.
Mr. Rufner?
Yes.
Ms. Stemper?
Yes.
We're gonna go on to ordinance 2023, motion passes. We're gonna go on to 2023-52. Would the clerk read that by title?
Ordinance 2023-52, an emergency ordinance authorizing the city manager to enter into an agreement with the Trumbull County Sheriff for police protection services.
So moved.
Second, discussion, please.
how long is this emergency ordinance
Mrs. Benitez,
supposed?
would you like the floor?
Yes, please.
All right, go ahead.
How long is this ordinance authorizing the city manager to enter into an agreement? Is it for 6 months? Is
Yeah,
it?
Ms. Benitez, it would be for the calendar year 2024, but there is a provision in there that we can get out of the contract with 60 days' notice.
And is there any penalty for getting out of it early, if we should be
There's
so
not.
lucky?
There's not.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else like the floor?
Um,
All I'd like to say is that right now, we needed protection till we can work something else out. There was a income tax 40% defeated, or we would have liked to put on another officer for at least an additional officer for at least 2 shifts. And as I had stated originally, if we couldn't get our police department back or get the money for the police department, that we could probably even look into joint, something like a fire district. I made that, brought that up to council 2 months ago, that we may look into a joint police district like we have a fire district. It may not work because of the budget restraints with the township, but it was worth pursuing, just in other words, to sit down and talk with the people. Is there any other discussion? Go ahead, Mr. Rufner.
Again, this is not stifling the committee that was just put together at all. This is a needed situation. The current contract expires December 31st. So this will continue police services going forward into '24. And as Mr. Bryan said, we have a 60-day clause where we can give them written notice 60 days in advance and terminate our contract with the sheriff without penalty, if we come up, or if the community committee comes up with a viable solution that is both affordable and effective. So it gives us options. It gives us the security and the peace of mind right now while that committee goes forward looking at options. So it's kind of the necessary evil. It's not meant to push that committee aside or push the Newton Falls Police Department option away. It's to allow us time to properly and effectively assess the options. No rush decisions.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Going to call for the roll?
Mr. Bariak?
Yes.
Mr. Rufner?
Yes.
Ms. Stimpert?
Yes.
Ms. Benitez?
Yes.
Going to go through it one more time. It's an emergency. Please call the roll, sir, for
Need a-
ordinance.
We need a
2020
motion and a second.
Ordinance 2023-52, right?
Right, we can get a motion and a second for the second.
Put a motion on the floor again, sir? I thought we just,
Yes, for the second vote, so we need a motion and a second.
Make the motion.
I'll second.
discussion, roll call then.
Ms. Benitez?
Yes.
Mr. Bariak?
Yes.
Mr. Rufner?
Yes.
Ms. Stimpert?
Yes.
Motion passes. An ordinance, ordinance 2023-53. Will the clerk read that by title?
Ordinance 2023-53, Version 1, an ordinance authorizing the city manager to enter into and execute various contracts with Pan American Insurance Group for employee health care insurance and benefits.
Why don't you read version 2 also, Mr. Cohen?
The ordinance 2023-53, Version 2, an emergency ordinance authorizing the city manager to enter into and execute various contracts with Pan American Insurance Group for the employee health care insurance and benefits.
And now it's up to council, Mr. Bariak, as to which version somebody wants to introduce.
I couldn't hear you, sir.
It's up to council as to what version they want to introduce. Version 1 or version 2. And the only difference is one's emergency, one's regular.
Do we need to, I wasn't aware, do we need an emergency on this?
The city manager stated that we need to have the contract in place to have the employees covered as of January 1st, so that there's no lag in claims or benefits. Is that correct, Mr. Housley?
Yes.
All right. And I'd like to go with the emergency ordinance because I'd like to put a motion on the floor that we pass this as an emergency. Motion dies. I'd like to put a motion on the floor that we, first version. My motion dies. We'll go on. Ordinance 2023-53. Will the clerk please read the,
We took care of that.
We're on to new business. We're moving on to new business.
oh, excuse me. We're going on to 2023-53, right?
We've done that.
No, we've handled that already.
Oh, I'm sorry. We just wasn't, oh, we're under new business, I'm sorry. Just saw that. Under new business, will the clerk please read the motion?
A motion to direct the law director to request proposals from qualified professionals to conduct a full forensic financial audit of the Village of Newton Falls and to present those proposals to the council at the next regular meeting of the council.
I'll make that motion.
Motion dies.
I'll second.
Seconded by Mr. Rufner. Discussion.
May I have the floor?
Go ahead.
I would like to see a full forensic financial audit. We're up for discussion now. If council would entertain a different option, I'm open to those kind of conversations, but at this time, I truly feel like a full forensic financial audit is a direction we should go.
And,
Is there like,
wait a minute, ma'am. Would you like the floor?
yes, please,
Go ahead.
Mr. Housley?
Yes.
Okay, is there a, okay, I'm for an audit, okay. But is there like between the regular audit and the forensic audit, is there another audit in between that's less expensive? Or, and then if you find, Mel, if you find something wrong, then you go to the forensic or not?
Yes.
Okay, which would be better, in your opinion?
Well, I guess, I mean, only council could choose which scope that they're more interested in eventually once that scope's developed between you all and Brad, because the scope's gonna have to be designed anyway, to seek quotes. They're gonna wanna know the scope. But there's also what they call a performance audit, which, extremely reasonably priced, and do both possibly if you wish, but where they go in and they evaluate the, all your policies and procedures, and they evaluate your financial, your fund balances, and they make recommendations on where you can make some improvements. And, you know, if I were to make a suggestion, I would suggest that you highly consider that, because just in my past 2 years here, I think that would be some good work for this community, because they'd rewrite your policies and make some recommendations for you. The other
John, can you
one-
explain the difference between the state audit that's being conducted and should be done next month and what you're suggesting?
Yes, I mean, the state auditors, they come in and they pull samples. They have some responsibilities to identify any, any misappropriation of funds or any mispostings of funds over percentages that they set. They put their opinion on it. Totally different than a performance audit. A performance audit is where you can give them some specific direction on what you would like them to evaluate. So, for example, maybe part of their scope for a performance audit we're talking about here now would be to evaluate your income tax rate structure and to evaluate your costs in your general fund, and then they would make a recommendation to you on, and they would also evaluate your cash balance in that fund, and then they would make some recommendations to you on what they think your income tax rates and structure should be. That's called a performance audit. Forensic audits can have a lot of different meanings. It can be very similar in that scope, or, you know, if there's some questionable activity that you would need some more detailed investigation of, per se. It's a little bit different. And just the use of the word forensic actually is kind of, can be more broad or can be more specific. So when we talk about scope, I mean, you should probably make Brad aware of maybe some specifics in the financial statements that you want them to look at. For example, maybe you just want them to detail evaluate payroll. Maybe you want them to, maybe there's a few expenditure line items that you're questioning. You pick out those line items, you know, just depending on what you want. And obviously, if they find some circumstance, you would think that they would generate recommendations for improvements, also very similar to a performance audit. There you have it.
Are you, Mr. Benitez, does that answer your question? Do you have any more?
Excuse me.
I'd like to have the floor when you're done.
No, well, I mean, because the forensic audit seems to be the most thorough, correct?
And it'll probably be extremely expensive.
That's what I,
You're
so,
not gonna get very much done for 50,000, I don't think. I mean, so if you've got something very specific you wanna look at, that's where they get involved. I've participated in those,
okay.
and they can run up into the hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Okay, what about then the performance one, what would that be?
Probably around 25,000 tops. And like I said, do both if you wish. But I definitely highly recommend the performance audit no matter what. And if you have, and I'll also tell you that I have a duty as your finance director. The state has a duty. The auditors here, they have a duty. If anybody suspects any misappropriation or anything questionable, you have a duty by policy to communicate that to at least the state auditor's office. They've got a communication there, and they will investigate it. I mean, it will not be overlooked at all. And there's also what they call a fraud risk assessment questionnaire. I don't know if they still call it that. It's called a FRAC, that the auditors require. Selected individuals, it's a random selection of people they send it to, but I did ask them to go ahead and send it to all of council. I mean, if you have any concerns, they can't release an audit until they address any concern you have, and that's all part of the audit. So, I mean, if there's anything you're questioning of being, you know, if there's any questionable activity that you have, please make sure you get it to the auditors. You can do it direct. You don't have to go through me. You can go through me, and I'll make sure they get it. You can ask me for their email, and I'll give you their email, and you can send it to them.
Is that, are you done, Mrs. Benita? I'd like to ask Mr. Stemper, why did you sponsor this legislation, ma'am? What was the reason?
Because I would like to have a forensic financial
But-
audit. I would like to have an audit done,
For what reason?
because I think there needs to be one.
Well, the only thing that I would say on this is that unless there's a specific reason that I feel somebody's stole money or misappropriated this or did this or that, we're putting the taxpayer out there to a lot of money. A lot of money, ma'am. So, and from my understanding, you need to have a reason to have a forensic audit.
I have a
mean,
concern for our
well,
financials.
you're gonna-
I don't answer
I
to
don't
you, Mr.
understand, what I'm
Variak.
trying to say is I wasn't aware of it, what you wanted to do.
Welcome to my world.
Okay,
May I have just one more?
okay, well, you
I
got
mean,
the one.
you know, ultimately, whatever I mean, a complete, comprehensive, and, you know, first of all, the state, they do a complete comprehensive audit, and then they have what they call materiality, where they set the percentage. It's a pretty low percentage, where they put their opinion on it. There's no error in these financial statements with that percentage. So now if you're gonna have, so typically you would not engage in a forensic audit to redo any of the state auditor's work, because that would be, but you can, but you would want to be very specific and give them some things to look at. That's all I'm saying. And it doesn't have to be real costly. So if you've got some things very specific you want them to look at, you can just give them those specific things. It does not have to be very costly. So, but there's nothing a forensic team can't do that the state auditor can't do. As a matter of fact, what I don't know is you could ask for one, but the state may have to make sure that whoever is awarded it, that they've been evaluated by the state to perform such an audit on a municipal government. It's very complex, and if you would like, I would like to recommend just giving you the auditor's phone number or something, so you
I've
Oh.
Oh.
could
spoke
talk
to
to him.
them. Thank you.
Do you have his number, phone number?
Yeah.
Okay, very good.
Mr. Rufner, would you like the floor?
Just one quick question for clarification. Is there another option available between the state and the performance that will provide you a more thorough query, I guess you could call it, rather than if the state only does a finite percentage of the overall financial situation. Can you specify you want lock, stock, and barrel, or just these areas, or just this fund? Would that be
Yes.
another course of action?
Yes, so, I presume you all understand, when I talk about scope, that's what you want them to look at. So it's called you can ask them to do additional agreed upon procedures, it's called. Where you can have them specifically look in great detail. They'll do a 100% test. I mean, they're probably less than going out this side. They're probably somewhere between $100 to $150 an hour, somewhere in that range. But once you get into the forensic groups, I mean, they can run. I imagine they might have some that are on, especially, I don't know, 120 to up to $500 an hour, depending on what they're involved with. So I mean, first of all, I'm asking you by policy, if there's something that you're concerned about, please inform the auditors. They have to know about it. I'm obligated to tell you that, and they're obligated to look at it.
Who had the floor? Mr. Rufner, you had the floor. Are you done, sir?
Yes, that answered my question.
I'd like to say something. My understanding, and if I'm wrong, I want the law director to correct me on it. Anything that I've been aware of, that I know, I'm gonna have to report this to the auditor, right?
You have knowledge of something that's
My knowledge of something.
inappropriate, yes.
Yes, sir.
You should do so.
I'm gonna have to report it, right?
You either report it directly to them, or it's Mr. Housley.
Well, we were sent
report it
some
to him,
forms,
and
sir.
he will report it.
We were sent some forms,
Yes,
or emailed.
right, that's what Mr. Housley was referring to.
Okay, good. I'll go for that. Anybody else like the floor? Do we have any amendments or any? Would anybody like to make any amendments? We had a lot of discussion on what type of audit to ask for and all this.
I mean, you can if you want to.
All right, I'm gonna call for the roll then, please. The motion on the floor is to direct the law director from qualified professionals for full forensic audit.
Mr. Rufner has to be recognized, Mr.
Be recognized, sir.
And again, I just want to make sure this is clear. This is to request proposals. This isn't actually to take the action. This is to come back with proposals on what it would cost and what the various scopes would be. So I think once that comes back, that'll give us the information that we need to further make a definitive decision as to how far, which way, and whatnot, if I understood the intent correctly.
I agree. I second that.
So I'm clear,
Make the motion.
are you asking me to do the request for proposals and then provide that to council for your approval at the next meeting? Is that what we're doing?
Yes, I believe so.
Call for the roll.
Mr. Rufner?
Yes.
Ms. Stempert?
Yes,
Ms. Benitez?
Yes.
Mr. Barria?
Yes. We have a motion. We're gonna go on to, will the clerk please read the motion?
A motion to appoint Heidi Zimmerman to the Parks and Recreation Commission for the term beginning January 1, 2024, and ending December 31st, 2026.
I make that motion.
I will second. May I have address?
Yes.
I made this motion. Heidi's been serving on the Parks and Recs Commission for some time, and I believe we have, is there one or two other positions open on Parks and Rec, Mr. Acom? I know we've gotten lots of applications, but do you recall what's with that?
You'll bear with me, I could,
Okay, yeah, please, because
I'll
I
check
meant to
the
look and I forgot.
Roll call.
Parks and Rec,
What?
we're talking about Parks and Recreation.
Yes,
Yes.
So Parks and Recreation has this seat open only,
and that's it,
and
correct.
that's it.
And we've not gotten applications for,
And Mrs. Zimmerman is the only applicant.
okay, clarify. Thank you.
How long has this been advertised, Mr.? How long have we been advertising for this?
Several weeks.
Couple of weeks?
I can only guess.
Has the Park and Rec's had enough people on it? I don't know who applied. Have we had a quorum?
Yes. This will be the final seat to be filled.
And I thought Mrs. Zimmerman was already on one.
That, the term for that seat expired, and then we advertised it again, and she reapplied.
Okay. Roll call.
Ms. Stimpert,
Yes,
Ms. Benitez,
Yes,
Mr. Bariak,
Yes.
Mr. Rufner.
Yes.
Okay, this passes.
Very good.
Ordinance 2023-54. Authorize the city manager. Would you read that by title, sir?
Ordinance 2023-54, an emergency ordinance authorizing the city manager to enter into an amended Director of Law agreement with Director of Law Bradrick Bryan.
So moved.
Second.
exactly what does that mean?
My current contract expires on December 31st, so this would reappoint me as of the first of the year. Terms aren't anything different, and it would run until a replacement is found. So, currently an advertisement for the position on the website, so.
Okay, but it says an amended Director of Law agreement with the Director of Law. Okay, does that mean for a month, 6 months, a year? What does that mean?
Well, it's continual until it says I can give 30 days notice, you can give 30 days notice to me. If somebody's found, I'm willing to talk about, what the appropriate date to leave, if it's less than 30 days, so.
Is anybody else? Are you done, ma'am?
Yes, I'm
Mr.
thinking.
Stemper, would you like the floor? Mr. Rufner, would you like the floor?
just the advertisement is out, being advertised for law director and prosecutor for one position, with flexibility to look at that. So Mr. Bryan has agreed to stay on until, if and when we find a suitable law director.
I'd like to say,
Prosecutor
when
too?
she's done, I'd like to say, I don't want to leave us like we did a couple months ago, we didn't have a law director.
Yes.
He's agreed to stay on for now, and I think that rather than leave us in the lurch without anybody like we did that, what were we, for a month and a half? I thought, how long were we without a law director, sir? Month and a half?
Week.
Well,
Well,
how long it was until we finally we got you hooked in there for,
it was a week. I was under contract for legal services until it
Yeah.
could officially be passed, because we had some issues with meetings not being able to go forward, but, so.
Is there any more discussion? Mr. Rufner, do you want the floor?
No, I'm good.
Any more discussion? I'm going to call for the roll.
Mr. Rufner,
Yes.
Ms. Stempert,
Yes.
Ms. Benitez,
I'm going to abstain because I don't quite understand this one, okay? That's all.
What did you say, ma'am?
I'm going to abstain.
You're going to abstain?
Abstain.
Abstain.
Okay, well,
What is your reason for abstaining, ma'am? What is your reason for abstaining?
I'm not saying yes, and I'm not saying no, I'm abstaining.
According to the
right-
charter, you need a reason to abstain, ma'am.
I just told you, I said I don't understand, I've got many questions about that. Okay, sir?
What do you need to help understand it?
I abstain.
Oh, how did the roll go so far? Mrs. Stemper, you voted yes?
without 4 votes, it will not pass, and it would have to go 3 readings before it could pass.
2 readings, right?
Well, 2 additional readings after this one.
I vote yes.
Okay, it's not sufficient to pass as an emergency. It can be on the agenda for next meeting, but it would need 2 additional readings to pass.
We'll have all the council here.
So I will be
We asked,
finished as of December 31st.
Mr. Rufner, I didn't hear your vote, sir.
It wasn't called, sir.
Would you call the roll, please, again, Mr.?
No, he was,
No, you voted
With
yes.
Mr. Rufner.
Oh, yes, okay, yes. My vote was yes.
That's
Sorry.
what I thought. Okay. Okay, we'll have to have 2 more readings on that. Scheduling of 2024 council organizational meeting. Do I have a motion to put that on the floor? Scheduling of 2024 council reorganizational meeting.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second that.
Well, when do you want to have it?
We skipped ordinance 2023-55, but I don't know when we want to.
Oh, I'm sorry, the paving program. The one- Hold on, let me turn these pages. We're gonna go to ordinance 2023-54 first, I'm sorry. Put the cart in front of the
55.
horse.
55,
It's already passed.
54, isn't it?
55.
It's 55, yeah.
Do they need to address the motion that's on the floor? Even though they skipped it, do they need to address the motion that's on the
We'll
floor?
go back to it when
Okay.
the time comes.
We'll go back, please.
Read it.
Go ahead.
Ordinance 2023-55, an ordinance authorizing the city manager to accept the proposal of OHM Advisors for engineering services for the Newton Falls 2024 paving program.
I have a motion to put that on the floor.
I'll make the motion.
Second. Discussion.
Do we have, sorry, here, please.
What's that, Mr. Rufner?
May I address?
Yes, go ahead.
Do we have an actual estimate of what this engineering service is gonna cost in full? I see a lot of options, I see a lot of, you know, tasks, I see a lot of different options and things here. It's showing roughly 53,700 is what we are going to pay for this engineering services. And granted, I understand without this services, we don't get roads paved, but is there any additional cost to this beyond what we're seeing here? Or is that all-inclusive?
Mr. Housley, would you address that, sir?
I don't believe this needs to be passed tonight, and I would like to ask for it to have another reading.
It is on first reading, so.
It's just first reading.
Yes, I would, yes, I need more time myself with this.
I'm sorry, but I have 54 wrote on my
That's okay.
agenda, the agenda that I was handed.
I make a motion that we table the ordinance, or lay on the table the ordinance until the next meeting.
I'll second that. Any more discussion? Roll call on the motion to table it.
Mr. Bariak,
Yes.
Mr. Rufner,
Yes.
Ms. Stempert,
Yes.
and Ms. Benitez.
Yes.
Motion to table is a pass. Okay, now we'll go on. Scheduling of 2024 council organizational meeting. Have a motion to put that on the floor.
So moved.
I'll second.
What date does anybody have in mind?
May I have an address?
January 3rd.
Go ahead, Mr. Stemmer.
I've had conversations with Mr. Bryan, and Wednesday, January 3rd would be our first meeting. If we can have the reorganizational meeting at 5 o'clock, an hour before our regular meeting, is what I would propose. So it'd be January 3rd at 5 o'clock.
Second.
And just by way of explanation, Mr. President, the charter calls for it to be the first Monday of the month. That obviously falls on New Year's Day this year, a holiday. So normally, under those circumstances, it would revert to the next day. I think the idea of the Monday was contemplated when the meetings were on Mondays, so that it would be, I think, contemplated they'd be held before the first meeting of the year. The meetings got switched to Wednesdays, so I think it fulfills the intent of the charter, and certainly we can't require people to show up and the public to show up on January 1st, so.
What day are you saying, sir? Second?
The third, Ms. Stimpert is saying, which would be the regular council meeting, would be at 6 o'clock on January 3rd, and she made a motion to hold the organizational meeting at 5 o'clock that day.
Okay. Any more discussion?
Was there a second?
Yes.
Well, we need a second on
I
that.
motioned
Sorry.
it, so.
Okay.
Mr. Stemper made the motion, seconded by Mr. Rufner.
No,
This other way around.
reverse it. I made the motion, she seconded.
All right, she seconded. Any more discussion? Roll call.
Ms. Benitez,
Yes.
Mr. Bariak,
Yes.
Mr. Rufner,
Yes.
Ms. Stempert.
Yes.
Going to go to public comments, 3 minutes on anything you want to talk about.
Good evening. Terry Alberini, 820 West Broad Street, Newton Falls, Ohio. I commend council for pursuing, and Mr. Housley, a forensic audit. For the last 2 years, I've heard from Mr. Bariak how much money that I've stolen from the village and how much Mr. Waddell has stolen from the village, and how we left the village in bad shape financially, which is totally untrue. Plus also the $50,000 contracts I was supposedly received from somebody in outer space. I'm not really sure who that was, but maybe we'll get some clarity, Mr. Housley, once this audit's done, to clarify some good people's names from this disaster that's been going on for 2 years. So thank you very much. I commend the council for doing this. I also commend the council for red flag on the bids for the insurance. Where are the bids for the insurance, health insurance programs for the employees? Where are those bids for your review? I don't get that. My experience as a trustee was, here's the vendors, here's the proposals. You go through them and you evaluate who the best vendor is for the policy, or excuse me, for the health insurance policies. I don't see that here. So that's another thing I would suggest maybe the auditors take a look at, to say, how come we're not bidding these? And how come these council people don't have this information to review and to make good, sound decisions? So thank you. Best of luck to you, John.
Honda Bright 326 Washington. I think the audit is good, but I would hope it's someone that doesn't work for the state, someone you find out, I mean, and I like to see it go back 6 years. It's not fair to blame him the year before something happened, whatever. It should go back 6 years. Another thing, I would like not another taxpayer dollar to go to anything that doesn't have to do to run the city before we get the study done on how to bring the police back. Is there anything done with those cars so their maintenance is upkept? Are they just sitting there rusting? Is there an inventory of all the equipment that was left in the police station? Has anybody done anything with that? Have the cars sat there for 3 years? What a lot of people understand about the sheriff's department, they cannot enforce city ordinances. So if you got somebody walking around town after curfew, they can't do anything about it. If somebody's got their radio blasting at 2 o'clock in the morning, that's a city ordinance. The sheriff can't do anything about it. I mean, everybody says, and I'm not talking bad about the sheriff's, there's certain things they can never do. And I'd like to find out how long do public records have to be kept? I mean, I know public officials' emails have to be kept so long, do they not? 3 to 5 years?
There's a records retention schedule that has to be followed, yes.
Yes. So if anybody deleted emails in the last 5 years, they broke the law. Because I'm really curious about all these guys walking around, and I'm not saying it's true, but I heard there was some trouble at the 530 bar with one of the persons from one of these houses. I have talked to some of the business owners up there. Everybody says everybody deserves a break. None of these guys are from around here. Whatever. But they've told me it hurts their business. We have a couple good businesses downtown, and I would say it hurts their business. I would not walk with my granddaughters past Arby's ever in the summer or springtime. For everybody sitting out there smoking and joking and talking very crude language. And then somebody says, well, we get the tax money from the guys. The only person making money off those buildings are the persons own them that get that much money from the state or their insurance companies. But I'd really like to know, I don't want another dime going to the community center. No, I'm not tied to it. I'm not from here. But, or anything else. I'm not saying that can be on hold, but how much money do we have to put towards our police department? And yes, I do want an audit, because I like to know what we're spending on stuff. I want a line-by-line explanation of what's being spent where for the last 5 to 6 years. Thank you.
Adam Zimmerman, 515 LeMay Avenue. One of the first questions I have is, maybe Mr. Bryan, you can help address in your closing comments, if you get one, on what we need to do to get records requests fulfilled. I believe I copied you on my last records request 2 weeks ago, saying I have several that are outdated I have not had a response on. One's nearing a year old now. Some are very simple requests. I get no response from the city. When I copy you on the emails, I also get no response from you. With the last charter amendment that passed, I believe it directed that we needed to have our records requests fulfilled within 2 days of them being put in. Does that affect records requests that have been put in that we don't have a response from in the past? There's no clarification on that, but I should not have to send in simple records requests over and over and over again, looking for simple answers to some simple records. I just get ignored. Nothing that says the records don't even exist, no reply whatsoever. That's one thing that we should look forward to having addressed more in the future. A forensic audit is something we desperately need right now. Switching topics a little bit here. We can understand why certain members of the administration may not want a forensic audit, but it is something that we need. Cost should not be an option in this audit. We need to fully look on what's been happening the last couple years. Multiple people have been accused of stealing money over time here. I've been one of them that's been accused of stealing well over $100,000 from the city, and that has been quickly dried up over time. Our finance director here helped put an end to that, and it sort of disappeared, but still, many people have been accused of misappropriating money over time, and we need to know the truth, whether this actually happened or not. So I'm looking forward to as deep a dive of a forensic audit as we can get. Thank you.
Philip Beer, 509 Ravenna Road. I'm all for the forensic audit too. I think that, to say the very least, I think the council that's going out has completely mishandled our city money. I'd like to have an account for where it all went, and if there is anything criminal, I'd like to see prosecution. Okay, that being said, I'd like to address the police department. I think the city wants our police department back. I know we can't just bring it back with a click of a finger, but I think you all need to go ahead and do whatever you need to do to get it on the ballot as early as possible, which I believe would be the May ballot, and get a committee together. I think people will support it with a new council that's responsible. Thank you.
Good evening, Lyle Waddell, Myrtle Beach. First of all, John, I wrote this proclamation for you tonight. My wife's going to be very happy. I'm not going to read this proclamation. I just can't bring myself to make it any worse than this meeting was. The CD from this meeting, or something from this meeting, should be sold to high schools and colleges on how not to conduct a meeting 101. I just can't read this. I'm so sorry. But thank goodness it's your last meeting, and hopefully the last meeting for some others. But I want to say that we have Julie Stemper, Ms. Benitez, Mr. Rufner, Ms. Persino, Mr. Axiotis, and Mr. Hansen coming in. They're going to put that train up on the track, and they're going to write that train up, and it's going to move in the right direction, finally getting to move forward. To add another little bit, at the meeting last night, I believe if you look in the charter, it says all boards and commissions have to be filled with qualified voters of the community. And if you look at that commission that the city manager put together, you have a Portage County resident, a Braceville Township resident, Newton Township residents. I think you need to put city residents on her committee and get rid of that. Well, get rid of the committee first of all anyway. Second of all, she keeps bringing up, and John keeps bringing up, missing money and all these other things, but I supported doing away with the community center when I was on council. I stand by that. That community center was great for all of us in the 60s and 70s. It was perfect for this community. But for the youth and the adults of today, that building will never work. It will never be self-sustaining. I wanted to move toward the future, put a new facility up that would be good for the youth of today, the adults, and move forward with that. If Heritage Accord wants to put that building together and restore it and make it a monument, I'm okay with that. That's why we gave him a contract that was illegally broken and violated by the court, and hopefully the judge will agree with that. Maybe they'll throw the key away, find some contempt of court, and give the city a belated Christmas present. Happy New Year, move forward, we're looking forward to it. Thank you.
Chelsea Harper, 515 High Street. So the audit is a great thing. I like the fact that we're going after proposals for the audit. Okay, I'm pretty sure a couple years ago, and you can find it in some minutes somewhere, but I'm pretty sure that it was suggested to have a full forensic audit, and then all of a sudden, everybody got fired, and nothing ever came of it. And then the regular state one that happens every year happened, and everybody said that it was sunshine and rainbows, and it just got thrown on the back burner. So it being up for grabs and proposals happening is a good thing, regardless of who it's against, regardless of how far back you go. If you want to go back as far as the records that we actually keep here are, go ahead, okay? I'm pretty sure none of us out here or watching at home are gonna be that upset about you spending money to find out what happened to it, okay? I mean, sometimes cities go into debt, sometimes, look at the United States. Okay, it happens. It doesn't mean you can't rebuild it, but you have to find the problem in order to rebuild it. The other thing, and it pushes my buttons every time that I hear it, yes, I agree that we need a police department. I do not agree that it is because of the sober houses that we need more police or that we need them in the city, okay? There are plenty of law-abiding citizens in there that just have an issue, and I stand by that, and that is a hill I will die on, okay? Everybody in here has an issue. There have been people elected to council who have an issue, okay? It is not fair to blame them. The businesses are suffering in town, and it's not just because of sober houses. It has a lot to do with everything that is going on in town. There are businesses that don't want to come here. There are businesses that have been pushed out of here. It is not by any one specific group of people. It is literally the city as a whole. So fix it. Don't be part of the problem, be a part of the solution. Stop pointing fingers at anyone. Just fix it. Do what you can to fix it. Disagree with each other, agree with each other, move on, but find a solution.
Anna EB 50 West 9th Street. I applaud council for tabling something that you're not sure of. I think that's a good idea. I do have a question about the truck for the water company. Did you see any different prices or bids on that, or do you have a price on that? I know you have things right in front of you. We don't have it. So, I mean, I'm glad you're really looking into the money that's going out. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Benny Cottrell, 16 Grant Street. I have a couple issues here. I've been having a lot of problems with zoning lately. I've talked to Mr. Carlin, he investigated, the head of the zoning and finance, or zoning and planning committee. He's been harassing me, and the neighbor's been harassing me, saying I need a permit. I've asked him repeatedly, tell me what I need a permit for, and I'm glad to get one. Everybody says I do not need to get one. We have a certain drug dealing neighbor that keeps harassing me, and the zoning keeps harassing me. I talked to the city manager last month, and she said anything you has to have the code violation. They've yet to do that. They keep putting it on a neighbor's property. Has nothing to do with it. So what do we have to do to stop being harassed by the zoning department? And what are we going to do to stop this? I mean, it's continuous. 3 months now. 3 months. He's at my house weekly, harassing me. So what do we have to do to stop this? And I've talked to other zoning guys in the past, and they said there's no violation, and they need to put it in writing, and they threatened me to take me to the zoning planning commission. Go ahead. I want to go there to see what kind of incompetence is going on here and what is going on. It's a joke. And my next concern is, what are we going to do about the marijuana? Every other village or place is putting things in place to stop it. What are we going to do? We have 3 smoke houses now. How many rehabs? We need to have something so pot is illegal to smoke. We don't need it to be sold in Newton Falls. We have enough issues now. We don't have a police department. What are we going to do to make this a better community, to make people want to come here and live here? I agree. My wife would not walk uptown past all the rehab places because they make comments and nobody feels safe. So what are we going to do to change this and make a better community?
Brian Krupp, 247 Elizabeth Street. I'll be brief. I just would like to speak to the council and the incoming members of council as well, and I would just like to appeal to your better judgment and to your, decision making. And I would really hope that as we move forward, I know the mayor's back here as well, and I would appeal to him as well. I really hope and look forward to the new council coming in. I want you guys to really think about representing your constituents, doing things for the betterment of the community as a whole, trying to work together, utilizing the authority that you're given as elected officials and appointed officials to work with the staff that you have in place, whether it's these individuals or whoever it may be moving forward, and work collaboratively with not only the staff, but also each other and also the community. I would really like to see this move forward. The idea of, and I know I'm one of the individuals, there's many individuals that have come up here, there's been a lot of people that were previously on council, some iteration of council at some point along the way, and it seems like we're always the ones that are up here talking. Everybody's got an opinion about one thing or the other. But I would love to see the pendulum that swings back and forth that has been happening for so long here. It needs to stop. I would love to see 5 individuals up here and the mayor be able to work together as individuals. Each of you represent your constituency, try to work on the betterment of your particular ward and on the village as a whole, try to be financially responsible, and just articulate what it is that you really want and what you're, when you make a vote or when you make a decision or when you submit something for legislation to put something on the agenda, that you're able to articulate why and what it's about and have, long form discussions. That's okay. Not knowing what, Patricia, I commend you on, not voting on something you didn't feel like you understood it, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Please don't feel the need to ever rush things through that you don't have clarity on or that you didn't get enough information on. That's what you have a staff for, and I would beg and plead that you guys would take advantage of that, utilize the authority that you guys have, because you do. You have the power and the ability to get all the information you could possibly get. Please work with the committees and boards. We want to try to get good people on these committees and boards, get good information, and then bring that to the public. There's nothing wrong with asking questions and being over, really going over the top with trying to understand what exactly it is that you want to vote on or what you want to do moving forward. So I would just please ask, as you move forward into the next year, this iteration of council I think is done, and we're going to see a completely different look and tone, I hope. I think we saw at the last meeting the tone was excellent. This meeting, not so much, and I probably contributed to that as well. And I would like to apologize. I know I've been one of the individuals that have come up here and I've made personal attacks and called people's names and have been aggressive and those kind of things, but I'm very passionate, as I know many of you are. I know you guys care about the community, and I would like to see that come through in your legislation and come through in your discussions. And like I said, always feel free to ask questions. There's no such thing as a stupid question. Always, always, always make sure you have the full understanding of what it is that what you're doing before you decide to vote on something. So that way the town, the village will know that you did your due diligence. Okay? Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
I still do not agree with the audit. Is there an audit scheduled in the near future? Isn't there one scheduled in a month or so? I believe there is. Now you're getting prices on the audit. Do you have a budget for it? Are you going to go back like the audience would like you to 5 and 6 years? Are you going to, in this audit, are you going to go and check on a forensic audit? Do you have an accusation you'd like to make? Do you have, for instance, is there some particular thing, as our treasurer said, that you should do? I don't think you've done that. Are we spending money now? We sure are. We're paying the law director to give you names, but then who's going to explain it to you? How long will it take and how much money? 20? No, 50? 100? It's interesting. In relationship to the meeting that was last night, there was a lot of people who spoke, and they all agreed on one thing. They love the community center. Heritage Accord right now, the past 4 years, has offered nothing to improve that building. It's just fact. That's all. It's just fact. They were not able to get the insurance. It was stated last night that they had told Mr. Lynch that, and it was okay, but it wasn't in writing. Also, where else are you going to go? The committee that they have, the department and the committee they have is at least trying, and they have done some amazing things, and this could possibly with help not only from dollars, but from grants, open within a year. It was also stated at the meeting last night that according to their own plan, it will be another 5 to 7 years before the community center would be available. Their ideas of what the community center will be is not what we're speaking of right now. People want a community center before they die. They want to see their kids in it, their children, having parties and graduations before 5 or 7 years. They do not, at this time, want to invest the kind of money and time in making this a showcase or a ballroom. They want to have it to go in and have parties, to have sock ops, to have wedding anniversaries. You can do that, and you can do it within a year. They're making progress. We've made honestly, if anybody can tell me up there what has been accomplished in 4 years. They received the grant from...
Please finish up your comments, sir.
Sure. They received the grant for $26,000, which was matched by Jarvis. Jarvis has told them if they can raise $980,000, they'll give them half. That's before they even start. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay. Since I'm first acting mayor on the closing remarks, since this may be our last meeting till after the first of the year, I'd like to first of all thank my ward for its support through 2 recalls, unwavering support. I tried never to let the people down. They rewarded me. My decisions, as I've been through 3 administrations I served on, and by the way, I've only missed 3 meetings in 8 years. I'm not here tonight to start running people down. I'm going to be Christmas, but I don't remember ever accusing anybody of stealing. It's just where the money went, frivolously. Just a little accomplishments I'd like to state. We got Scott Street Sewer Project, not a cost to the city, not one dime. Dunkin' Donuts is coming in. They gave their fair share. We didn't give the store away just to give the store away. We got a great garbage company now. Yes, it's got its little bit of nicks and knacks, but we got it. We didn't stick us with 5 years like the past administration did. We've got 3 years, and if we don't like them, we can kick them out. So far, besides the normal wear and tear, they're doing a good job. I was also glad that I could mend fences between our neighbors, and I talk about Newton Township and Braceville Township. Yes, I had to go and eat a little bit of crow and get yipped at and yapped at, but you could see the results when you work with people. What we got was we got the Scott Street Sewer Project working with Mr. Augusta and Mrs. The other lady that's on the township. I'm glad to see that something that I took initiative to has blossomed into something that everybody can enjoy, and we're getting a $1.1 million grant now. All I'd like to say is that moving forward, it's been the greatest honor of my life to serve the people. And again, well, one other thing, I did stop the sale of the transmission lines when we wanted to start dealing off our electric lines and that. I would hope that the new council takes careful consideration about the money. I don't remember ever saying that anybody stole any money. Like I say, I thought the money wasn't spent wisely. And I think you can see that, I didn't quit council either when, you know, when I was done using it for my personal gain. The only other thing that I'd like to say is that I want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas. I hope that we can get the community center going. I'd like to see it in not 5 to 7 years, and I don't know where the money's going to come from right now. But we do have a good grant writing company now. We had one before, Youngstown State University. We paid a lot of money to, and we didn't really get near what we've got now with the new grant writing company, and I hope they can come through and perform. Again, Merry Christmas, and it's been an honor and the deepest pleasure of my life. And I want to apologize for missing those last 2 meetings because I had a real health crisis, and I'll be getting it taken care of after the first year. I appreciate this council understanding that I would never stick to community. As far as a proclamation, I'll never ask for one. If you want to give me one, fine. If not, I did it out of my heart. I did this service out of my heart. Thank you. Council now? Mrs. Stempert?
I'd just like to say, Happy New Year, Merry Christmas, have safe times, and we will see you guys in January.
Merry Christmas, and hopefully I make my Ward 1 people happy with their choice, and Happy New Year too. Take care.
Mr. Rufner?
Just want to remind everybody that this Friday night is the last Late Night in the Falls event uptown. Come out, support the local business, support the small business, shop local. If you get out, get an opportunity, don't hesitate to keep us down. You see me up there regularly. So always willing to talk, always willing to speak with people. So I'd like to see more of that, across council. I'm hoping for it. I hope it comes through. Other than that, Newton Falls Area Chamber of Commerce has a meeting coming up. I forget the exact date. I want to say it's the 19th. Is that tonight? No. Yeah. I could be wrong, but anyways. Enough of that. Everybody have a happy holiday, Merry Christmas, so on and so forth. And we'll see you out here next year.
Make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
A second.
Roll.
Ms. Benitez?
Yes.
Ms. Stempert?
Yes.
Mr. Rufner?
Yes.
Mr. Pariak?
Yep.
8-11.
Had this too.
How are you?
Forget your phone.